Some of you may know that May is Disability Awareness Month. So today's topic is using digital marketing to win during Disability Insurance Awareness Month. Our presenter today is Shaun Hampson. He is the Director of Operations at the Council for Disability Awareness. Please note that all lines will be muted during this webinar. If you'd like to ask a question, please go to the question pane on your control panel and type it in. We will answer the questions at the end of the webinar. Also note that we are recording this webinar. It will be sent to you along with the presentation in a follow-up email. You'll receive a link, and you should probably have that by tomorrow. I also wanted to mention that the Plus Group will be holding its first ever National DI Day on May 5th. This event will take place in various locations throughout the country and will include training, guest speakers, CE, and MetLife's Words That Work video. It's great. We're real excited about this, first time we're doing this, and we hope you will join us. Please feel free to go to our special website to register or for more information. That website is www.nationaldiday.com. Again, that's www.nationaldiday.com. Okay, everyone, I'm now going to turn this over to Shaun.
Thank you, Tracy, and hello, everyone. I'm delighted you could join us today, and thank you especially to the Plus Group for inviting me to speak to you today. I'm Shaun Hampson. I'm the Director of Operations for the Council for Disability Awareness. I've been with the CDA about 3 years, and my background is primarily in marketing communications. So I'm hoping that today I can share some knowledge with you that will help you make sense of today's digital marketing universe. We're just over, as Tracy said, we're just over a week away from the beginning of Disability Insurance Awareness Month. And together with the Plus Group, we thought this would be a perfect time to schedule this webinar. If you're not familiar with the CDA, let me start by telling you a little bit about us. We're a nonprofit educational organization dedicated to raising awareness about the risk of an income-interrupting illness or injury and the importance of having insurance to protect you against that risk. We're supported by 18 of America's disability insurance companies, and we work to educate working Americans and their trusted advisors about the importance of income protection planning. We don't sell products ourselves. We simply provide communications and research to help consumers and professionals to make decisions. So in today's webinar, we're going to talk about why digital marketing is so important in 2015, and as well as the key do's and don'ts in maintaining your online reputation. We'll then cover some practical tips and talk about the primary tools involved. We'll finish by showing you some of the resources available specifically for Disability Insurance Awareness Month, including the toolkit that the CDA provides each year. There's a lot to cover, so I'll be moving pretty quickly, but please feel free to contact me after the webinar if you need any clarification or further info. So digital marketing, what and why? Digital marketing loosely is defined as the marketing of products or services using digital channels. And today there are numerous digital marketing channels, far too many to mention here, each with their own purpose and nuance, and it can be really overwhelming. But for today's purposes, though, we'll focus on 3 primary pillars: web, social media, and email. To understand the importance of digital marketing today, we must start by understanding the target audience, today's working consumer. So this slide kind of shows the breakdown of the current U.S. civilian workforce, of which there are about 150 million workers currently. And roughly 50 million of those are millennials, and that's defined as born in 1980 or later. And that number continues to grow. The oldest millennials are now in their mid-30s, and we're only a few years away from millennials being the largest generation in the workforce. Numbers aside, the workforce, and in fact the economy in general, is starting to be dominated by people who grew up online. This has an enormous impact on their behavior as an employee and as a consumer. For example, using email is second nature, but using it in the workplace is a little different from using it in their personal lives. Nevertheless, the expectation is that anything and everything can now be done online. This next chart shows how much the internet has penetrated our daily lives. These numbers are surprising even to me as a marketer. 97% of workers under 30 are now online. 87% are on Facebook, and 85% have a smartphone. But it's not just millennials. The majority of people in all generations have adopted this widespread usage of all things online. But millennials are the generation that has the most widespread usage. In particular, this statistic is eye-opening. 85% of consumers would use the internet to do research before buying life insurance, according to a recent study by Limra and Life Happens. You'd expect millennials to have the highest propensity to use the internet here, and they do, but the gap isn't as wide as you'd think. 80% of older workers would use the internet, compared with around 90% of millennials. So really all generations embrace using the internet to do research before buying life insurance. And there's more good news. Even though they'd use the internet to do their initial research, around half would still prefer to buy their insurance in person from an advisor. That's true for all age groups. This is really important because it shows us what the internet can and can't do for advisors. It's a great tool to help you get new business, but it's not going to do all the work for you when you're selling complex products. It doesn't take away the value that you provide. If our industry follows trends from other industries, we may see this shift over time. But for now, it's useful to know that many consumers still prefer to complete their insurance purchase offline. And now I just want to share with you a little bit more info from that study I just mentioned by LIMRA and Life Happens. It's called the Life Insurance Barometer Study, and it's an annual study, and it's really informative. You can get it on either of those organizations' websites. This particular slide shows that consumers, especially younger consumers, use the internet for research when seeking financial advice. As you can see, all ages have 34% of people have used the internet to get information about a specific agent or advisor, and 28% have used it to find an agent or advisor. Think about this for a second. Basically, 1 in 3 people decided to look for an advisor and used the internet to do it. That's 1 in 3 prospects who decided whether to give you a second look based on what they could find out about you online. So that brings me to our first key takeaway. Potential clients will use the internet to evaluate you whether you want them to or not. So if you know they're going to do it, you at least want to control some of what they will see. And that's where your digital marketing comes into play. As a trusted advisor, your reputation is paramount, and your online presence is a key component of that reputation. As a potential client, I need to know a few things about you. Can you solve my problem? Can I trust you? Are your customers generally happy? And how do you compare to other potential providers of the same service? The search for a service provider can begin in several ways, but let's assume a potential client has either come across you on their own or you've contacted them. What do they do next? Probably they ask some combination of these questions. What's your website like? Do you have a Facebook page or other social media profile? Can I find any information, good or bad, about your track record? The primary pillars of your online presence are your website, your social media profile, and third-party content about you. Regardless of what else you do online, though, your website is going to be your primary presence, the hub that sits at the center of everything else. I like to think of it as your digital storefront, the first impression of you that any potential customer is going to get. And when you think about it, that means you're automatically going to be measured against what else consumers see online. And when we're talking about other things that consumers see online, let's consider a few of these things. In 2015, everything is immediate, and most of it can be done anywhere on your smartphone. Services like Amazon Prime, Netflix, mobile check-in, Uber have one thing in common. They're all easy and fast. Easy and fast has become the standard, the expectation. While you can't make the process of applying for DI quite so quick and easy, you can do some simple things to make it easier for consumers to get to know you, get to know your product and service, and decide whether they want to work with you. And your website is your primary vehicle for doing that. So what do consumers expect from your website? We all know that in our daily lives, having a professional appearance is important. The same applies to our website. It's likely that a prospect's first look at you will be through your website. If it's confusing or unpleasant to look at, they might decide to look elsewhere. A recent J.D. Power study found that consumers are more likely to buy car insurance from a company with better navigation on its website. In 2015, it's no longer enough to simply have a website. If you don't have one, you'll probably lose prospects to someone who does. But if you have a bad one, you will also lose prospects to someone who has a good one. It doesn't necessarily need to be fancy, but it does need to be professional looking and easy to use. And it should also work well on mobile. This might astonish you. 60% of web traffic today is now via a mobile device. That's a smartphone or a tablet. If your website doesn't work well on mobile devices, which many older sites don't, it might be time for a refresh. Because if it's not quick and easy, visitors are likely to lose interest and move on. Despite the high penetration of the internet, there's one major problem. It's really easy to misrepresent yourself online, and that's where trust becomes really important. How can consumers know that you are legitimate? There are some simple things you can do that will help show them they trust you. For example, show them that your company employs real people. Show them photos, staff bios perhaps. Show them that you're in their local area and have a local phone number they can call. Don't immediately try to sell them a product or get their information. There's no need to hide everything behind call us or give us your email address. If you can give them useful information without expecting anything in return, that helps to build trust. That said, you can still add value for people who do give you their information. Think of it this way. You wouldn't propose on the first date. Just like when you're selling in person, you need to build trust and make a person comfortable before they'll be ready to do business with you. You can't expect your website to close the deal. You'll see that the last point on this slide refers to user-generated content. What on earth do we mean by user-generated content? Basically, content about you that someone else created. This could be a written or video review, a rating, a comment on social media, anything that's not your marketing. Consider this. If you tell me that you have the best widget and the best prices, I might be skeptical because you have every incentive to want me to think it's the best, even if it's not true. But if I hear the same thing from 10 people who have no stake in whether I buy your widget or not, I'm far more likely to be convinced. And you can see here on the screen that this holds true, especially for millennials. According to a 2012 report by Bazaar Voice, millennials are almost as likely to trust online recommendations from strangers as they are recommendations from friends and family. I found this quite astonishing when I read this report. The same report finds that 84% of millennials say that user-generated content influences what they buy, and this one's really important. 29% of millennials won't complete an insurance purchase without checking user-generated content. That's a pretty compelling case for including user-generated content in your marketing strategy. Besides content, you also need to consider how people will find you. Have you Googled yourself, for example? And if you did, were you easy to find, or did you find anything you didn't like? Have you thought about how prospects would search for you? And on this topic, that's where the term search engine optimization becomes important. Search engine optimization basically is trying to make sure that you show up in internet searches and Google searches. The thing to remember about search engine optimization is this. Google is trying to make sure that when a user performs a search, the results they get are the most relevant and useful to their search. Good search engine optimization is not about trying to trick Google. It's about making sure Google knows which questions you can answer. You can learn a lot about SEO by performing your own searches. You can see my example on the screen here. I searched for disability insurance, Maine, and that's where I'm located, and a variety of different combinations of words. Think about the words you'd use to describe your services, then try different combinations of words and see what comes up. This way you'll get a sense of how likely consumers are to find you if they are conducting a search. And I'm assuming here that most of you are focused on local or regional markets, hence the example being Maine focused. Most of the time, people search local. That said, you can tailor it as appropriate for your target market, but remember that you need to keep it consumer focused. For example, if you're targeting doctors, I'm not sure that doctors would search for disability insurance for doctors. They might search for disability insurance for people in their area or disability insurance for high earners, for example. But it's important to think about the words a consumer would probably use if they were doing a search. I've tried to give you a flavor of SEO here, but it's a little too involved for you to try to perfect it yourself. This is really an area where I would recommend hiring someone to help you. For a small and simple website, you can get some basic help to get you set up, and then decide if you want to pay for ongoing or further assistance. It really depends on your budget and your needs, of course, but given what we've just talked about, I'd say you should strongly consider it. So now that we've talked about web, let's talk about one of the other pillars of your digital marketing strategy, social media. I want to just give you some quick statistics about social media. I think I mentioned this earlier, but 71% of U.S. online adults who use social media are on 71% of U.S. online adults are on Facebook. But usage of other networks is growing also. So with those statistics, it's tempting to think that you should definitely be on social media. That's not necessarily true. Yes, there is a large number of folks on social media, and it's probably a place where you can find a lot of prospects. But the worst reason to do social media is because everyone's doing it. And that's kind of what this little cartoon, which always makes me laugh, is trying to get at. Social media is just another tool in the marketer's toolbox, and it's obviously a very popular one at the moment, but it's important to think through what you're going to do there if you are going to get on there. It can be a really great way to boost your online reputation, to add social proof to what your selling points are, but only if you do it well, and only if you do it consistently. It's important to make sure you only try to do what you have the time and resources for, and also that you're strategic. You can't just wing it. Despite what it's become, social media is primarily about connecting people with people, not connecting advertisers with customers. When you're on a person's timeline, you're essentially intruding in their personal space. This is risky, and you have to be careful. The best way to avoid problems is to focus on being helpful and interesting, not on promoting yourself or your business. A great way to think about this is to follow an 80-20 rule when posting content. That's 80% content from other people and 20% of your own content. By doing this, you present yourself as a helpful expert and build trust among your audience. If you've set up your profile correctly, you don't need to include information about how they can contact you for a quote or how you can help them get protected on everything you post. People will find that on their own, but only if they like you enough to take a second look. So the key takeaway from this section really is people are not on social media to buy insurance. They're there to share their lives with family, friends, talk to like-minded people. In fact, a recent survey by Principal Financial Group, which is one of CDA's member companies, found that only around 4% of millennials want to hear from insurance companies on social media. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. It just means you shouldn't use it without first thinking about your goals, what you can put into it, and what you're going to try to get out of it. And also, the most important thing, how you can add value to your followers. I'm just going to pause here to give you guys a quick note about compliance. If you're going to use social media, you also need to be aware of compliance concerns. This is especially true if your securities licensed, but it's still important for anyone in financial services. FINRA has issued guidance on how it views social media and how to stay compliant. Please know that I'm not an expert on compliance. I'm just trying to introduce you to the issue. If you are looking to learn more, you might start with your carrier or broker. But I also recommend checking out Financial Social Media, now part of the More Communications Group. They have a simple compliance guide on their website and lots of other useful information. It's definitely worth reading. So the final piece of the puzzle that we're going to talk about today is email. Consider these two statistics for a second. The second one in particular, that 42% of millennials prefer to hear from insurance companies via email. That's a lot higher than the stat that I gave you a few seconds ago about social media. That's surprising in a way, given that we keep hearing that millennials are more about social media. I think this shows that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. And I want to give you another key takeaway now. Of everything you do online, your email list is the most useful thing you own. That's because it's what turns digital marketing into actual sales. If someone gives you their email address, they're saying that they're interested in hearing from you. That doesn't mean bombard them with material until they call you, but it does mean you have an opportunity to cement the relationship, to give them some more information about yourself and give them the chance to consider doing business with you. So here are a few tips for email marketing. It's important, first of all, to tell people what to expect when they sign on. How often will you email them, and what will you email them about? Once you've told them, it's really important to keep your word. If someone's expecting a quarterly newsletter, they're likely to be turned off if you start emailing them every week. Just like with social media, there's no right or wrong frequency. It's about how much time you have and how often you have useful information to share. I heard recently from my mortgage broker, for example. She used tax deadline season as a way to start a conversation. She provided helpful information and asked me several thought-provoking questions and asked me to reply with the answers. I'd been procrastinating about calling her to talk about a refinance, but her email was the nudge I needed to make it happen. She got in touch at the right time with the right questions and the right information. That's more of an art than a science, but it's a good example of how to do it. So now that we've gone through the basic principles of digital marketing, I want to quickly show you guys the resources provided by the CDA and others to help you take advantage of Disability Insurance Awareness Month, which is coming up next week. Hopefully, the message is loud and clear from what I've talked about so far. You're going to need good content. Everything I've talked about today comes back to that. If you're doing digital marketing, you're going to need content. You can get content in two ways. You can either create your own or you can share other people's. And as I said earlier, a mix of the two is generally the best approach. The exact mix depends on the intended use. As we discussed earlier, you might want mostly third-party content for social media, but on your website you'll have a different mix, probably more of your own content. And the good news is that you're not alone in this effort. There's lots of us creating content, and most of it is intended for you to use. Carriers, brokers, MGAs, industry organizations, the media and bloggers, everyone's creating content. The bad news is there's so much content that it's difficult to break through the noise, but that's why it's important to think about what you have to say and what you have to share that's interesting to clients and prospects. And all of that brings me to this, the resources that are available for Disability Insurance Awareness Month. Each year, the CDA creates a special toolkit containing materials designed to help promote DIAM. While anyone can use it, the primary goal is for advisors to share the information within their networks. And we've worked really hard this year to improve the material that we provide, but as a result, we're not quite ready to make the materials available today. We expect the material to be available by the end of this week. However, I can give you a sneak peek about what's going to be there. You may have seen CDA's Disability Disconnect infographic before, but we've created a brand new updated version for 2015. It's available for use electronically or to print and use as a handout. We've also made the individual chart images available so you can use them in your own materials and presentations. Next, we have some content for your website. You might already be familiar with CDA's tools, the Disability Counter, the PDQ, and EIQ calculators. If not, I recommend checking them out. But these tools can also be embedded in your website, giving your visitors the chance to evaluate their own personal exposure without needing to leave your site. You can get the code you need by visiting our DIAM toolkit. Next, we have content for social media. Earlier, we spoke of the importance of using third-party content in your social media activity. Our DIAM toolkit contains lots of suggestions for social media content. We've created a list of CDA member companies' social media profiles to follow and share content from. And there's also lots of images for you to download and use on your own social media profiles. And there's some examples on your screen now. Also new for 2015, we have a guide to industry resources and the consumer-focused Disability Insurance 101, designed to give potential clients a simple overview of the most important considerations when evaluating their options. This document could be a great way to introduce a client or prospect to disability insurance before you dive into their unique needs. And last but not least, I'm really excited to inform you that we're also going to be launching a consumer blog, and that's going to be available as of May 1st. We really strived this year to create more consumer-oriented resources to take advantage of Disability Insurance Awareness Month, and the blog is going to be the centerpiece of that effort. We're putting the finishing touches to it now, and as I said, it will be available May 1st. So, key takeaways from our Disability Insurance Awareness Month tools. As I said, just as a reminder, the Disability Insurance Awareness Month toolkit will be available this Friday. The CDA Consumer blog will be available May 1st, and we will be posting a link to the blog on the DIAM toolkit. So that's still the place where you can go to get all the information. If you want to be notified when those things are available, you can, if you haven't already, signed up for CDA emails. Right at this time, the best way to do that is to send me an email asking to be added to the list, and my email address will be available at the end of the presentation. And of course, as I said earlier, CDA is not the only organization providing resources for DIAM. DIAM was actually started by Life Happens, formerly the Life Foundation. And just like the CDA, they provide tons of great resources to help you spread the word. You can go to lifehappens.org to get access to those resources. And I do also, as Tracy mentioned earlier, I want to recognize the Plus Group for planning and promoting a National DI Day coming up on May 5th. They're organizing, I believe, 21 regional events as well as a webinar with a great lineup of speakers that can help educate and inspire you about DI sales. Sure to be a great day, and I, for one, am really looking forward to it. And last but not least, you should check with your carrier about what resources they make available for DIAM. If you're on social media, you can also follow your carriers so that the DIAM information they're sharing shows up in your newsfeed, which makes it really easy for you to share it yourself. And speaking of social media, I also encourage you to connect with the CDA on social media. We have 2 Facebook pages, one the CDA and one is a separate campaign that we've been operating for the last couple of years called Defend Your Income. We also have the equivalent Twitter accounts for both of those. And we have a LinkedIn group and a LinkedIn company page where we share updates regularly. I'm almost done. I just do want to take one moment to recognize our supporting member companies. They're shown on your screen now. And if you work with one of our member companies, please take a moment to thank them for their support of our organization. They're really providing a great service to the industry, and without them, the work we do would not be possible. So please, if you work with any of these companies, give them a thank you. And that's all the content I have. I just want to thank you again for giving me the chance to speak to you today. I hope I've provided some helpful information. Please feel free to contact me anytime. You'll see my information on the screen, my phone number or email address, and there's a reminder again about the Disability Insurance Awareness Month Toolkit. Thank you. I'm going to turn things back to Tracy.
Okay, great. Shaun, I just want to mention that if anyone has any questions, please go to your question pane and just type them in. Again, if you have a question, you can type it in and we'll address it. A couple of people asked if this is recorded. It has been recorded. You will receive a link by tomorrow. It usually takes 24 hours, so you should get an email thanking you for coming, and there'll be a link that'll have the presentation as well as the audio. So that's great. And I did want to mention again our National DI Day, May 5th. We are going to be holding that in many different locations throughout the country, and we hope you'll be able to attend that. Again, that website with the registration and also more information is www.nationaldiday.com. Again, if you have any questions, please feel to type them in. If not, we appreciate Shaun and the Council for Disability Awareness, and we look forward to National DI Month. May. I think that's all we have today. So Shaun, thank you again to you, and thank you to all of you for attending today. We hope that you got some good information. And for more information about Plus Group websites, please check out www.plusgroupunus.com or contact your local Plus Group office. Again, thank you everybody, and have a wonderful day. Thank you, Shaun.
Thank you, Tracy.